The alien fleet had been cruising through the darkness of space for weeks. Its command ship, the Emperor, was the pride of their empire, huge, with advanced technology and weaponry that had obliterated countless civilizations. The aliens were experts in war, and their leader, Commander Kale, was one of the most respected and feared beings in the galaxy. His reputation for calculating every possible outcome in battle was unmatched. As the fleet approached human space, Commander Kale stood on the bridge of the Emperor, his cold, green eyes fixed on the holographic map of their destination. He didn't even glance at the human fleet. He saw them as no threat. They were too small, too primitive to stand against such an advanced force. The humans had never been able to hold their own against the more powerful species, and Kale believed this would be no different. "Send the signal," Kale ordered with a calm, almost dismissive tone. The signal went out to all ships in the fleet, directing them to deploy their most dangerous weapon, the gravity well. This device would create an enormous gravitational force that would trap the human fleet, preventing them from escaping or maneuvering. It was an iron cage, and the humans had no way to break through it. "Once the trap is set," Kale muttered to himself, "they'll be easy to destroy. They won't even see it coming." The alien fleet moved with terrifying precision, their ships forming a perfect circle around the human-controlled system. The gravity well began to power up, its engines humming with the kind of energy that made stars tremble. The humans were unaware of the trap that had been carefully laid out for them. The aliens could feel the victory already. Kale could practically taste it. From the human side of the front, Commander Arlo of the Vanguard stared at the screen before him. The fleet had detected the incoming alien force, but there was something strange about the way they moved. They weren't making any direct approach to the human colony. It was almost as if they were waiting. It wasn't a battle that was about to start. It was a death sentence. And yet, Arlo felt a strange calm. "Sir, we've detected a large concentration of enemy ships on a direct course," Kara, his communications officer, reported. "They're surrounding our homeworld. They're setting up a gravity well." Arlo didn't show fear, though inside. His heart raced. He had heard stories of this alien weapon, but no one had ever seen it in action before. If it worked as they said, it would trap the entire human fleet, pulling them into a small, confined area. The aliens could destroy them at their leisure. It was a perfect plan, at least on paper. "Activate the countermeasures," Arlo ordered. Kara hesitated for a moment before typing on her console. "I'm activating the Vanguard's defensive systems now. We won't be able to avoid their fire forever, but if we can buy ourselves some time, we can outsmart them." Arlo leaned forward, staring at the tactical screen. He had no illusions about the severity of the situation. The aliens were vastly superior to them in terms of technology and numbers. But the humans had one thing the aliens didn't have: unpredictability. While the aliens believed they had the situation figured out, the humans were about to show them how wrong they were. Commander Kale stood at the front of his ship's bridge, watching as his fleet's trap was set into motion. He looked out at the human fleet, scattered and vulnerable. The Vanguard, the largest of the human ships, had moved slightly out of formation, but it was of little consequence. The alien fleet was more than enough to handle whatever the humans tried to do. The gravity well was almost fully active, and once it engaged, the humans would be stuck, unable to flee. "It's over," Kale muttered under his breath, barely able to suppress a grin. In his mind, the humans were already defeated. They had no way of escaping the gravity well. He had studied human tactics extensively and knew they would panic, trying to flee in any direction. But they couldn't escape. The trap was closing in, tightening like a noose around their necks. He almost felt sorry for them. He turned to his subordinates. "Ready the final barrage. Prepare for their last desperate attempt at resistance. They won't last long." But as Kale gave the orders, something caught his attention on the tactical screen. The Vanguard had suddenly turned toward them, its engines flaring with energy as if it were charging. The rest of the human fleet, rather than scattering in panic, formed up around the vanguard like a shield. The humans were moving in close formation with one clear goal. "What are they doing?" Cale asked, his voice rising in confusion. "They're coming straight at us, sir," his communications officer reported. "But why?" The alien officer's voice trailed off as the realization hit them all at once. The humans weren't running. They were charging. Commander Cale stared at the screen, disbelief written across his face. Was this some kind of trick? They were running straight into the gravity well, into the trap. The humans couldn't possibly think they could fight their way through it. The trap had been designed for control, not to let anything in or out. If they entered it, they would be shredded. But instead of retreating, the humans were pressing forward. And the alien fleet wasn't prepared for this. Cale had made one fatal error. He had underestimated humanity's desperation, their ability to fight back when cornered. He had assumed they would surrender or flee, as every other species had before. But humanity wasn't like the others. They didn't retreat in the face of danger. They found a way to win, no matter the odds. And now, the aliens were about to realize that they had made a grave mistake. As the alien fleet prepared to unleash its destructive force, the vanguard and the human ships surged forward, prepared to use their final deadly strategy. What the aliens didn't know was that this move, this reckless charge, was about to turn their own trap against them. The humans were not running into it. They were setting a trap of their own. Cale's confidence began to crack. The alien fleet moved forward with unshakable confidence. Commander Cale, standing on the bridge of the Emperor, watched the human fleet through the view screen, his cold green eyes scanning their every move. The humans, as far as he could tell, were weak and disorganized. The Empire had been observing them for decades, and every battle report had painted them as an inferior species, one easily crushed beneath the might of the alien forces. They lacked advanced technology, the firepower, and the strategic brilliance that Cale's species had perfected over countless generations. This was going to be easy, he thought. Too easy. The trap was nearly set. Cale's fleet was positioned perfectly, surrounding the human system, and the Emperor was ready to deploy their most feared weapon, the gravity well generator. Once activated, it would generate a massive gravitational field, pulling in all ships within its range, leaving them stuck and helpless. No ship could escape its pull, not even the Vanguard, humanity's strongest warship. The aliens had planned every move, studied every possible outcome, and knew that the humans wouldn't be able to fight back. With the gravity well, their fate was sealed. Cale smirked as he turned to his officers. "Activate the gravity well," he ordered, his voice calm and full of assuredness. His fleet had the firepower to wipe out any resistance. The humans had no hope of survival. Meanwhile, aboard the Vanguard, Commander Arlo stared at the tactical readouts before him. The alien fleet was closing in, their ships forming a perfect circle around the human system. He knew exactly what was coming. He had seen the reports about the gravity well. It was humanity's worst nightmare, and the aliens were about to use it to crush them. The question wasn't whether the Vanguard could survive. It was whether humanity could survive at all. "We're surrounded, Commander," Kara, the communications officer, said quietly. "The gravity well's almost operational. If they activate it, we won't be able to move. We'll be sitting ducks." Arlo's eyes never left the screen as he processed the information. His mind raced, but outwardly, he remained calm. "We won't be sitting ducks. We'll make them regret underestimating us." His voice was resolute, almost as if he were trying to reassure himself as much as his crew. He had no illusions about the odds. Humanity was outmatched in every way. But there was one thing the aliens didn't understand: humanity's ability to surprise, and Arlo wasn't about to let this be the end. He'd heard stories of the old battles, where humanity fought with everything they had, even when the odds were impossible. That spirit was alive and well in every crew member aboard the Vanguard. With a deep breath, Arlo issued the order to activate the ship's countermeasures. Initiate evasive maneuvers. Prepare for the worst. But we won't let them win without a fight. The Vanguard lurched as its engines roared to life, pushing the ship into an unexpected direction. Around them, the other human ships followed suit, breaking formation and dispersing. But instead of fleeing, they moved closer together, forming a loose but cohesive battle line. The aliens expected them to scatter in terror, but instead, they saw humanity coming together for one final stand. On the bridge of the Emperor, Commander Kale frowned as he watched the humans. They weren't fleeing. They were charging straight at him. The human ships continued to move, and now, with their counterattack in full swing, the aliens found themselves trapped in their own gravity well. The humans had a plan, and it was working. The first few alien warships, once the pride of their fleet, were now caught, unable to escape the pull of the gravity field that they themselves had created. Redirect all firepower to the Vanguard, Kale commanded urgently. His voice echoed through the bridge of the Emperor as panic began to ripple across his fleet. The alien ships that weren't yet pulled into the vortex had launched a barrage of weapons aimed directly at the Vanguard. But the human ship was moving too fast, evading their shots with expert precision. And it wasn't just the Vanguard that was fighting back. The other ships in the fleet, once scattered, had now reformed into a defensive line, protecting their flagship from the alien onslaught. Kale watched in disbelief as a barrage of laser fire from the Vanguard blasted into the alien ships closest to them. They were no longer just defending themselves. They were actively hunting down the aliens, using their own weapons against them. With every successful hit, a ripple of panic spread through the alien fleet. The humans were no longer the weak, defenseless species they had assumed them to be. They had transformed into a terrifying force of nature, their tactics proving every bit as dangerous as the most advanced alien weaponry. Kel's officers scrambled to respond, trying to regain control of their ships. But the damage was already done. The gravity well was no longer under their full control. The pull was erratic, and alien ships were being dragged into the heart of the energy vortex. In some cases, their own ships collided with each other, breaking apart in explosions of fire and metal. The once pristine alien fleet was beginning to crumble under the weight of its own overconfidence. The humans. There. One of Cal's officers stammered, unable to finish his sentence. It was clear to everyone on the bridge. The aliens had made a fatal miscalculation. They had assumed the humans would break and cower. Instead, they had fought back with a fury that not even Cal's advanced mind could predict. Cal clenched his fists, the realization settling heavily in his chest. This was not how the battle was supposed to go. Humanity was not just surviving. They were winning. The humans had turned his greatest strength into their own weapon. And now his fleet was on the edge of defeat. Cal had underestimated humanity, and it was a mistake that might cost him everything. His once unshakable confidence in the alien fleet's superiority was now slipping away, replaced by a rising tide of doubt and fear. The battle was no longer in his favor, and there was no way to predict how far humanity's resilience would carry them. The trap had been set, but it was not the humans who were caught in it. It was the aliens, and Commander Cal knew, with terrifying certainty, that the worst was yet to come. As chaos erupted across the alien fleet, Commander Cal's mind raced. His once unshakable confidence had been shattered. The human fleet, previously underestimated, was now making full use of the gravitational trap that had been designed to be their tomb. The Vanguard and the other human ships moved like ghosts, weaving in and out of the gravitational pull, using it to their advantage in ways the aliens had never imagined. Cal's officers scrambled to regain control of their ships, but the situation was spiraling out of their hands. Some of the alien warships were trapped in the vortex, their engines screaming as they fought to escape the unbearable pressure of the gravity well. Others had been torn apart in catastrophic collisions, their hulking forms crumpling like paper in a storm. The once pristine alien fleet was now a fractured mess of fire, debris, and confusion. For the first time since the battle began, Kale felt a chill of fear crawl up his spine. The humans weren't just surviving. They were tearing apart his fleet. Every minute that passed, the odds became more and more in favor of the humans. The Vanguard, that hated ship, was at the heart of the counterattack, its weapons unleashing deadly precision. Laser blasts hammered into alien ships, cutting through their shields and armor like they were made of paper. Alien vessels exploded in violent bursts of energy, leaving nothing behind but debris and scattered wreckage. "Report," Kale barked, trying to gather his bearings. "Sir, the gravity well's instability is spreading. Ships are being pulled into it even though they aren't within range. Our systems are failing," his tactical officer reported, panic creeping into his voice. Kale clenched his teeth, his mind struggling to piece together a plan. His fleet had been torn apart in minutes. There was no time for counteroffensive strategies, no time for reinforcements. The humans were relentless, pushing forward with an unstoppable momentum. "Redirect all available fire to the Vanguard. Now." Kale's voice cracked with frustration. At that moment, the Emperor's weapons systems fired, sending a hail of laser beams at the Vanguard. However, in an almost surreal display of agility, the human ship dodged the incoming barrage, slipping out of the way at the last second. It wasn't just about speed. It was as if the Vanguard had anticipated the attack before it even happened. The human ship seemed to read the alien moves, countering them at every turn. With surgical precision, the Vanguard released another round of concentrated fire, this time striking the alien flagship itself. A massive explosion rocked the ship, sending ripples of shockwaves through the surrounding alien vessels. "Direct hits," one of Cal's officers shouted. Cal's heart skipped a beat. The Emperor, the symbol of the alien empire's power, was now on the edge of destruction. It was impossible. The Emperor should have been unstoppable. But here, in the face of humanity's desperation and ferocity, the once great flagship was being reduced to a burning wreck. "Can we hold them off?" Kale demanded, gripping the armrest of his command chair. The officer hesitated. We can't. Their weapons are too powerful. The fleet is falling apart. We're being overwhelmed." A cold sweat broke out across Cal's forehead. His fleet, the pride of their empire, was crumbling. His mind raced, searching for any possible way to salvage the situation, but there was nothing. The gravity well, once their greatest weapon, was now a liability. It was pulling everything into it, including their own ships. The human counterattack had turned the tide of the battle, and it was only a matter of time before the aliens lost everything. Suddenly, another explosion rocked the Emperor. The central core of the flagship began to fracture, and warning alarms blared throughout the ship. Cal's vision blurred as the bridge shook violently. He grabbed the side of his seat to steady himself. "Evacuate," Cal shouted, his voice sharp with panic. The escape pods began to deploy, but it was too late. The Emperor was already caught in the gravity well's crushing grip. The engines sputtered and shut down as the massive ship was pulled into the center of the vortex. The once mighty alien flagship began to bend and twist under the strain, its hull cracking like an egg. The bridge erupted in chaos as the crew scrambled to escape, but Cal knew it was over. His fleet had been defeated, his flagship destroyed, and the human fleet was now in full control of the battlefield. As Cal stumbled back from the viewports, trying to escape the collapse of his once proud ship, his thoughts turned to humanity. He had underestimated them. He had believed they were weak, easy prey, but he was wrong. They were resilient, and in the face of overwhelming odds, they had turned the tables on the aliens in a way that no one had expected. The trap they had set for the humans had become their own destruction. The Emperor was now doomed, and so was Cal's entire fleet. As the flagship was pulled into the heart of the gravity well, its final moments filled with fire and destruction, Cal's mind drifted to the humans. What had they known that he hadn't? How had they turned the tide of battle with so little? The aliens had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the ultimate price. In the end, Kale knew the truth. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater, something the aliens could never understand. They were fighting for victory, and they would never stop. And with that thought, Commander Kale knew, with horrifying clarity, that this would not be the last battle between his people and the humans. But next time, it wouldn't be the humans who were caught off guard. It would be the aliens. The devastation of the alien fleet continued to unfold before Cal's eyes, and in his mind, everything that had led up to this moment felt like a cruel twist of fate. He had once believed that the alien empire's power was unmatched, that their superior technology and countless centuries of warfare experience would ensure victory. And yet, here he stood, watching as the tide of battle turned in an unpredictable and terrifying direction. Humanity's resilience had shattered his empire's most advanced weapon, the gravity well, and turned it into a weapon of destruction against the aliens themselves. As Kale stumbled through the shaking corridors of the Emperor, his thoughts began to scatter, trying to grasp at some glimmer of hope, some chance for redemption. The once proud flagship was on the verge of collapse, its systems failing one by one. The escape pods were launching, but the gravitational forces at the center of the well made it nearly impossible for the alien officers to escape in time. Kel's own pod had been damaged, and it would be a miracle if he could even make it out alive. But it wasn't just the Emperor that was falling apart. The rest of the alien fleet was in disarray. Ships that had once been symbols of invincibility were now nothing more than floating wrecks, drifting toward the gravity well like helpless prey. The Vanguard, humanity's warship, was still maneuvering with incredible precision, its weapons firing relentlessly. Every shot it fired seemed to find its mark, piercing through the alien defenses and sending entire ships into fiery explosions. Commander Arlo, aboard the Vanguard, could hardly believe the sight before him. The alien fleet, which had once seemed so powerful, was now crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. His crew, united in their resolve, had outmaneuvered the alien tactics at every turn. They had survived against impossible odds, and now they were delivering the final blow to the alien invaders. "Sir, the Emperor is taking heavy damage. It looks like they're trying to escape," Kara, the communications officer, reported, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. Arlo glanced at the view screen. The alien flagship, which had once held such dominance over the battlefield, was now floundering, its massive frame being pulled into the heart of the gravity well. The ship was disintegrating under the strain, its engines sputtering and sparks flying from the shattered hull. Kale, the commander of this alien fleet, was no longer a figure of terror. He was a broken leader, trapped in a ship that was being consumed by the very trap he had set for humanity. "Not today," Arlo muttered under his breath, his hand hovering over the firing controls. He knew they had to finish the job. This wasn't just about winning. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. Humanity would not be pushed around. They would not cower before any force, no matter how advanced or powerful. "Fire," Arlo commanded. A barrage of concentrated energy surged from the Vanguard's cannons, piercing through the heart of the Emperor. The alien flagship erupted in a fiery explosion, its remaining defenses obliterated in seconds. The ship, once the pride of the alien fleet, was now a lifeless hulk drifting toward its doom. It was a fitting end for a ship that had underestimated the humans, and its destruction sent a wave of panic and disarray through the rest of the alien forces. On the bridge of the Emperor, Kale watched in stunned disbelief as the core of his flagship imploded, its once pristine metal now reduced to smoldering ruins. The control panels flickered with warnings, and alarms blared in his ears. He had been so sure of his victory, so confident in the superiority of his forces. But now his empire was crumbling, and he was nothing more than a trapped animal, struggling to escape a fate he had never seen coming. The alien officer beside him looked up from his screen, his face pale with fear. "Sir, the fleet is collapsing. We're losing ships faster than we can keep track of. The humans, They're unstoppable. Kel's grip on the console tightened as his last shred of hope evaporated. We underestimated them, he said softly, his voice tinged with bitterness. The humans aren't what we thought. They're more dangerous than we imagined. The officer's voice cracked as he spoke. What do we do now, Commander? Kale stared at the view screen, his mind slowly accepting the truth. The alien empire's greatest fleet was disintegrating, and there was no one left to stop the humans from sweeping through the galaxy. The trap they had set had turned into their own grave. There would be no recovery from this. It's over, Kale muttered, his voice filled with reluctant acceptance. The remaining alien warships tried to break formation, to flee into the safety of space, but it was too late. They had been caught in the chaos of their own trap. Ships collided, weapons malfunctioned, and the once dominant alien fleet was reduced to a scattered mess of wreckage. As the humans continued their assault, Kale knew it was only a matter of time before the last remnants of the alien empire's military strength were wiped from the galaxy. Meanwhile, Arlo and his crew watched as the final pieces of the alien fleet were swallowed up by the gravitational forces they had once tried to use against humanity. The Vanguard had emerged victorious, and the humans had delivered a crushing blow to the alien invaders. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. As Arlo looked out at the remnants of the alien fleet, his face was grim. The battle had been won, but this victory was just the beginning. Humanity had proven its strength, but there were still many challenges ahead. The galaxy was vast, and there would be more enemies, more threats. But one thing was certain: humanity would never be caught off guard again. They had fought for survival. And now, they were ready to fight for the future. The aftermath of the battle was both an eerie silence and a deafening roar. The vast stretch of space, once filled with the thunderous sounds of laser fire, explosions, and the hum of mighty engines, was now filled with wreckage. The remnants of the alien fleet drifted like lifeless carcasses, their hulking forms torn apart, their lights extinguished. The once proud Emperor had been swallowed by the black void of the gravity well, its once glorious metal frame now nothing more than twisted debris, floating helplessly in the wake of humanity's furious retaliation. Commander Kale's escape pod had launched, but like the rest of the alien forces, it had no place left to hide. The aliens had tried to make this their victory, but it had turned into their ultimate defeat. The humans, once seen as weak, had risen like titans, unshackled by the odds, and taken the galaxy's power back into their own hands. On the Vanguard, Arlo stood before the view screen, watching as the final remnants of the alien ships disintegrated, leaving only fragments of metal and broken technology in their wake. His crew, battered but victorious, moved around him, processing the magnitude of their triumph. Kara, the communications officer, approached him with a somber look on her face. "Commander, we've received an incoming transmission from the Alliance. They've heard about our victory." Arlo nodded. He was already prepared for the political fallout. The human forces weren't the only ones watching the battle unfold. Word of the Vanguard's victory would spread across the galaxy. Allies would gather, but so would enemies. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had just made a massive statement. "Patch it through," Arlo said, his voice steady. The screen flickered, and a holographic image of Admiral Reeve, the leader of the Earth Alliance, appeared before him. The older man's face was filled with pride, but there was something more in his eyes, a glimmer of resolve. "Commander Arlo," Admiral Reeve began, his voice firm, "what you and your fleet have done today is nothing short of remarkable. Humanity has sent a message to the galaxy. We are not weak. We are not to be underestimated. You've struck a blow not just against the alien invaders, but for all of us. The tide has shifted." Arlo didn't speak immediately. The weight of the victory still settled over him, and the enormity of what had been achieved was only now beginning to dawn on him. He knew that humanity's war for survival wasn't over. It was far from it. But today, they had secured a foothold. Today, they had made a name for themselves, and the galaxy would never see them the same way again. "Admiral," Arlo said, his voice low but unwavering, "we've won today, but the war is far from over. The aliens aren't the only ones out there, and I believe this victory will stir more than just hope. It will stir fear. The galaxy's predators will start looking at humanity differently, and they won't like what they see." Reeve gave a knowing nod. "I'm afraid you're right, Commander. This won't be the last test humanity faces, but it's the beginning of something bigger. We can't afford to rest on our laurels. The universe is full of threats, and now humanity will be ready for them." Arlo turned away from the screen, his eyes falling on the horizon of space outside the Vanguard's window. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. He could feel the tension in the air, the rising pressure. There was no more time to be the prey, to wait and hope that something would protect them. Humanity had just proven that they could fight and win. But now, they had to prepare for the next fight. And this time, they wouldn't be fighting to survive. They would be fighting to dominate, to protect everything they had fought for. "Prepare the fleet for departure," Arlo ordered. "We've got work to do." As his crew began to mobilize, the Vanguard moved away from the debris of the destroyed alien fleet. It glided through the vastness of space, now a symbol of humanity's resurgence. Arlo's mind raced with the next steps: the rebuilding, the securing of territories, and the inevitable retaliation that would come. The victory against the alien invaders was only the beginning. The universe was wide, filled with enemies who would now see humanity as a threat, but it was also filled with new opportunities. Humanity wasn't just surviving anymore. They were standing at the threshold of something greater. The Vanguard and the fleet of surviving human ships would carry the message to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity would no longer be an easy target. Humanity had proven it could fight, and it could win. The Vanguard had shocked the galaxy once. Next time, the galaxy would know it was no accident. As they moved toward the horizon, Arlo knew one thing for sure: humanity was no longer the underdog. They had become the force that could reshape the future. And the aliens who had once considered humanity insignificant, they would never forget the day they learned the true strength of mankind.